There's a moment that happens in almost every kitchen, every evening, right around the time the light starts to soften and the day begins to fold in on itself. You reach for the food bowl. You hear that familiar rattle of kibble against ceramic or the soft peel of a pouch, and your cat comes trotting in with that little chirp that sounds almost like a question. You set the bowl down. And then something small happens that most people never stop to notice. Your cat eats, but they don't purr. That quiet doubt you feel, it doesn't make you a careless owner. It makes you a thoughtful person. And what I want to walk you through today is something I've been circling in my head for a long time, because it kept showing up in cat after cat in my clinic. The way we feed our cats, the small choices we make around the bowl, the timing, the temperature, the height, the ritual around it, all of it shapes something much deeper than nutrition. It shapes trust. It shapes the sound of the purr you hear later, curled against you on the sofa. And by the end of the next 18 minutes, I want you to understand exactly why one small change in how you feed your little one can turn a quiet, obligatory meal into the loudest, most contented purr you've heard from them in years. I've spent over 2 decades working with cats in clinical practice, and if there's one pattern I've watched play out in owner after owner, it's this. Feeding gets reduced to a task, a scoop, a bowl, a floor, but cats are not built for that kind of feeding. They evolved as small, cautious, solitary hunters, catching 8 to 12 tiny meals a day in shifting locations in short bursts of concentrated focus. The bowl on the kitchen floor at 7 in the morning and again at 6 in the evening is a human invention. And your cat's body, their nervous system, their instincts are still running on software written thousands of years before that bowl existed. There's a landmark line of research out of the Waltham Pet Care Science Institute in the United Kingdom, going back years now, showing that how, when, and where a cat eats has measurable effects on their stress hormones, their body condition, and even their bond with the person feeding them. This isn't fringe. This is the science we've had sitting in front of us the whole time. So grab something to drink, get comfortable, and stay with me. Because I'm going to take you through a story, not a checklist. A story that starts at 3 in the morning with a sound you've probably heard, and ends with a very specific change you can make tomorrow at breakfast that will, in my honest clinical experience, make your cat purr louder than they have in months. If this is the kind of slow, careful cat conversation you've been looking for, quietly hit that subscribe button so we can keep having them. Let me take you back to that 3 in the morning sound. You know the one. It's the soft patting of paws down the hallway. Then the low, drawn-out meow at the bedroom door. Not a cry, not an emergency. Just a request. A small, insistent voice asking for something. Most owners assume it's hunger, and they're partly right. But it's not hunger the way you and I experience hunger. It's a hunt cycle. It's the internal clock of a small predator waking into what should be its most active hunting window, the pre-dawn hours, and finding nothing to hunt. That meow at your door is the opening scene of a story your cat has been trying to tell you. And once you understand what they're really asking for, everything about the way you feed them starts to shift. Here's the master question I want you to hold on to through the rest of this. Why does the way you place a bowl on the floor at 7 in the morning affect the sound of your cat's purr at 9 at night? Because it does. And the chain of cause and effect that connects those 2 moments is longer and quieter and more beautiful than most people ever realize. The first link in that chain is the shape of the meal itself. Most cats in most homes are fed 2 large meals a day. Sometimes 1, sometimes free-fed, with a bowl left out constantly. Each of these 3 patterns creates a very different internal experience for your cat. The 2-meal pattern floods the digestive system with a large volume of food twice a day, leaving long stretches, often 12 or 14 hours, where the stomach is empty and the body is quietly producing acid with nothing to work on. That acid, over months and years, is one of the reasons I see so many middle-aged cats vomiting bile in the early hours of the morning, that yellow foam on the carpet you find before your coffee. It's not a mystery illness. It's often just a stomach that has been empty for too long. The free-fed pattern, on the other hand, removes the hunt entirely. There's no anticipation, no arrival, no ritual. Food is just there, ambient, like the wallpaper. And a cat living that way often becomes quietly disengaged from mealtime altogether, which flattens one of the most important emotional exchanges you and your cat have every single day. Already, before we've even talked about what's in the bowl, the rhythm of feeding is doing something to your cat's body and mood. Skip past this, and everything else we discussed today will only get you halfway. Get this right, and each of the next changes stacks on top of it. Location is the second link, and this one surprises almost every owner I explain it to. It's not just when you feed, it's where. Cats, by their deepest instincts, do not like to eat next to their water. In the wild, water sources are contaminated by prey carcasses, and evolution has quietly wired your cat to keep those 2 resources apart. When you put a food bowl and a water bowl side by side on a plastic mat in the kitchen, which is the setup in probably 80% of the homes I visit, you're creating a low, constant background tension every single time your cat approaches either resource. They drink less, they eat with a slight edge of vigilance, and over time, that low-grade tension becomes part of the emotional signature of mealtime. Move the water. Put it in a different room, or at least on the other side of the kitchen, at least 3 or 4 feet away, ideally further. And within about a week, in most cases, you'll notice your cat drinking more and eating with a softer body posture. Their shoulders drop, their tail relaxes. You'll see it if you're looking. Remember that soft padding down the hallway at 3 in the morning? Here's what your cat was really doing. They weren't just asking for food, they were asking for the hunt they didn't get the night before. Because a cat fed 2 large meals with no in-between activity is a cat whose predator software has been left idling all day. An idle predator software wakes up at dawn looking for a target. Surface matters too, and it's the third link in the chain. The surface the food sits on. I know this sounds absurdly small, but stay with me, because this is one of those tiny changes that, in my experience, has produced some of the biggest shifts in cats I've worked with. Most food bowls sit flat on the floor. That means your cat has to bend their neck downward, compress their whiskers against the sides of the bowl, and eat in a posture that, for a small predator, whose whiskers are one of the most sensitive sensory instruments in the animal kingdom, is genuinely uncomfortable. There's good work out of researchers at institutions in Brazil and in the veterinary behavior community more broadly on what's sometimes called whisker fatigue, or more accurately, whisker stress, the low-grade sensory irritation cats experience when eating from deep, narrow bowls. Switch to a shallow, wide dish, ideally ceramic or glass, no more than about 1.5 inches deep, and raise it slightly so the rim sits somewhere around 4 to 6 inches off the floor for an average-sized adult cat. What you'll see, and I've watched this happen dozens of times, is a cat who suddenly eats more slowly, more calmly, and actually finishes the meal instead of walking away half full and coming back to graze irritably 20 minutes later. Pause with me here for a moment because I want to say something important. Everything I'm walking you through is what I've observed in general clinical practice and what the broader research points toward. Every cat is an individual. If your little one has a medical condition, if they're on a specific therapeutic diet, or if you're noticing anything unusual about their eating, please talk to your own veterinarian before making sweeping changes. This is a conversation about ordinary healthy cats living ordinary domestic lives and gently improving the quality of that life. Temperature is the fourth link. Cats evolved to eat prey that was warm, fresh, body temperature roughly around 101 degrees Fahrenheit. When you scoop cold, wet food straight out of the refrigerator and put it on the floor, you're offering your cat something that smells muted, tastes flat, and feels wrong in the mouth. Their sense of smell drops sharply as food gets colder, and for a cat, smell is not a garnish on the meal, it's the meal. It's how they decide whether something is safe, fresh, and worth eating. Let the food sit out for 10 or 15 minutes before serving, or if you're comfortable doing it, warm it gently by placing the container in a small bowl of warm water for a few minutes. Never microwave wet cat food because it heats unevenly and can create hot pockets that scald the tongue. Aim for something that feels barely warm to the back of your hand. Not hot, just no longer cold. The difference in engagement is often startling. A cat who yesterday walked up, sniffed, and turned away will today lean in, take that first careful lick, and settle down to eat with real interest. I remember a cat who came into my clinic in the middle of a long, damp spring, brought in by a very worried owner who was convinced there was something seriously wrong with her appetite. This cat, a lovely, quiet, middle-aged tortoiseshell, had been eating less and less for weeks. All the blood work came back clean. Physical exam, unremarkable. And when we sat down and walked through her feeding routine, it turned out the owner had, with the best of intentions, started serving her food straight from the fridge because she'd read somewhere that it kept the food fresher. We changed nothing except the temperature. Room temperature, a few minutes to warm up, that was it. Within 4 days, the cat was eating full meals again. Within 2 weeks, her weight was stabilizing. Sometimes, the smallest thing is the whole thing. If you're still with me this far into the conversation, I want to ask you something, because you're clearly the kind of owner who genuinely wants to get this right. In the comments below, tell me one thing. Where does your cat's food bowl sit right now? Kitchen floor? Utility room? Near the water? Near the back door? Just describe it in a sentence. I read these, and I'll often reply with what that placement is likely telling you about your cat's daily stress load. Do that, and let's keep going, because the next few links in this chain are where everything starts to come together. Sound is the fifth link, and I know that phrase sounds strange the first time you hear it, but think about it from your cat's perspective for a moment. Cats have an auditory range that stretches far higher than ours, up around 64,000 hertz, roughly 3 times the upper limit of human hearing, which means the small, sharp sounds we barely register, the clink of a metal spoon on a ceramic bowl, the rasping scrape of a fork against the sides, the sudden pop of a foil lid. All of these register in your cat's nervous system as sharp, startling events. Every single meal, twice a day for 15 years. That's tens of thousands of tiny startles woven into the emotional fabric of what should be one of the most peaceful moments of their day. Slow down the sound of preparing the meal. Use a soft plastic or wooden utensil to scoop the food, not metal. Set the bowl down gently, not with that little clacking bump we all do without thinking. Speak in a low, even voice, not the high sing-song call most of us use when we're calling a cat in. Their nervous system will read the entire experience as safer, which means the parasympathetic side of their nervous system, the rest and digest side, gets to stay engaged during the meal. And that, more than almost anything else, is what sets up the deep, contented purr you hear later. Ritual is the sixth link, and this is where we start moving from mechanics into something closer to a relationship. Cats, more than most animals in our lives, live on ritual. Predictable sequences of small events give them a sense of safety that no amount of affection can substitute for. Which means the way you prepare a meal, the exact order of steps, matters enormously. Pick a sequence and keep it. The same sound to call them in, always. The same phrase, spoken softly. The same order, wash hands, open the food, prepare the bowl, place it down, step back a half pace, wait. That waiting, that half pace back, is the piece almost no one does. Most of us set the bowl down and immediately hover, or reach to stroke or start talking. Step back. Give your cat one clear breath of space to approach the bowl on their own terms, as if they just found it. That tiny gap gives them agency, and agency is one of the most underrated ingredients in a cat's emotional well-being. And now the micro stakes here. If you skip this piece, if you keep hovering, keep talking, keep interrupting the arrival at the bowl, what tends to happen over months and years is a cat who begins to eat quickly, defensively, with their body low and their ears half back, as if the meal might be taken away or interrupted at any second. That posture, once it sets in, is genuinely hard to unwind. It's much easier to prevent it now than to unwind it later. Which brings us to the seventh link in the chain. And this one, I promise you, is worth everything we've built up to. Because this is the piece that, in the cats I've watched most closely, seems to be the difference between a quiet, obligatory purr and the deep, chest-rumbling, 10 times louder purr you actually came to this video looking for. Do you remember right at the beginning that soft padding down the hallway at 3 a.m? The small voice at your bedroom door? Here's what your cat was really telling you. They weren't asking for food. They were asking to hunt. And the single most powerful change you can make in the way you feed your cat is to give them the hunt back. Picture what that looks like in a real home. Instead of scooping food into a bowl and putting it on the floor, take a small portion of their daily food, whatever kind you feed, and use it as the target of a short hunting sequence before the main meal, 2 or 3 minutes. A wand toy with something that flutters at the end, dragged unpredictably across the floor, along the edge of a sofa, briefly disappearing behind a cushion. Let your cat stalk. Let them freeze. Let them pounce. Let them catch. And at the very end of the sequence, when their pupils are wide and their tail is twitching and their whole body is lit up with focus, that is when the food appears. Not from your hand, ideally scattered across a puzzle feeder or a lick mat, or even just tossed one piece at a time so they have to chase and find each one. Then, once that small hunt is complete, the main meal and the calm ritual we've built through the rest of this conversation. A beautiful study from the University of Lincoln in the United Kingdom looked at environmental enrichment and feeding. And the researchers found that cats who were given even short daily opportunities to hunt for their food showed measurable reductions in stress-related behaviors and measurable increases in what we might loosely call contentment behaviors, including, and this is the part that stays with me, longer and deeper purring during rest periods later in the day, not during the hunt. Later, hours later, on the sofa, curled against you, that's where the 10 times louder purr actually lives. It doesn't come from the food. It comes from the fulfillment of the instinct that was supposed to precede the food. Give your cat the hunt back, and everything else in your relationship with them gets warmer. Order matters more than people expect. Hunt first, then feed. Not the other way around. A cat who eats first and hunts second is being asked to do vigorous predator work on a full stomach, which is uncomfortable and unnatural, and most cats will simply refuse. A cat who hunts first, catches, and then feeds is following a sequence their body has been waiting their entire life to complete. Return to that kitchen scene from the very beginning. The soft evening light, the bowl in your hand, the chirp of your cat trotting in. Only now, before the bowl touches the floor, you pause. You reach for the small wand toy tucked into the drawer by the fridge. You crouch down. And for 2 or 3 minutes, you let your little one become, briefly, exactly what they were built to be. Then you set the bowl, or better yet, scatter the pieces of the meal across a puzzle feeder on a mat you've placed a few feet away from the water dish, in a shallow, wide, gently raised dish, food warmed to room temperature, in a soft, ritualized sequence, with a low, steady voice and a half step back. And your cat eats, slowly, calmly, fully. And a couple of hours later, when they climb into the curve of your lap and settle in, the sound that starts low in their chest and grows into the room around you is not the polite, quiet purr you're used to. It's deeper, louder, longer, 10 times louder in the way owners actually mean it when they say those words. Not because you fed them more, because you fed them right. Before I let you go, one gentle reminder. Every cat is an individual. If your little one is very young, very old, on a therapeutic diet, has a chronic health condition, or has ever had trouble with weight, food motivation, or digestion, please talk with your own veterinarian before restructuring their feeding routine. What we've talked about today is a general framework for ordinary healthy cats living ordinary indoor lives, and it's meant to be adapted gently and slowly over weeks, not overnight. If any of what I've said in the last 18 minutes has changed how you're going to set that bowl down tomorrow morning, would you do one small thing? Leave a comment telling me which of these 7 links you're going to change first, just one. The temperature, the placement, the sound, the ritual, the hunt, whichever one landed. I read them, and I use what you tell me to shape the next of these long, slow conversations. If this is the kind of careful cat thinking you've been looking for, subscribe so we can keep investigating the small mysteries in your cat's life together. And if you know another cat owner who's been quietly wondering why their little one doesn't purr the way they used to, share this with them. Sometimes the smallest change at the bowl is the beginning of the biggest change in the bond. I'll see you in the next one.